and welcome back to another fun and exciting episode of this old Allis Chalmers. Yep, haven't touched it since last time. More on that in a bit. So for those of you who are only here to watch this video, my apologies for not doing anything lately. It has been insanely busy here lately. Look, the D2 got some exercise. Hey, the hay baler's been moved, and it actually works. Holy cow, the shop's clean. Yeah, I've been busy. So, in the meantime of all that other work going on, I've still been waiting for parts. And then we got parts. So, a while back, I got a box. We have some connecting rod cap shims and 3 connecting rod bearings. There's supposed to be candy in here. I swear there was candy in here. Steiner always sends you candy. Major benefit of ordering from them. Anyway, so I emailed them. I was like, hey, I'm pretty sure I ordered 4 bearings. And I got an email back that said, oh, we weren't supposed to send that out until the order was complete. We only had 3 left in stock. There was back ordered. We'll message you when we get the next bearing in. Well, that was back before I posted the last video, which was how long ago? 1 month? 2 months? I don't even remember. Still no call. So it looks like they're still out of stock, and I was getting tired of waiting. So digging through the pile of parts, I found one more set that is in good enough shape to use. They came out of the tractor that we're working on, and you know, usually I don't like to reuse bearings like that, but in this circumstance these are in good enough shape. I think we'll be fine. It's not like this tractor is going to be seeing, say, I won't see a ton of hours, but honestly this one's probably the one around here that sees the most hours. But so long as we keep putting good oil in it and taking good care of it, I think we'll be fine. Alright, so first things first, I gotta address a comment I got referencing how I put the piston pins and connecting rods onto the pistons. This comes from Wes D. I'm not even going to try and pronounce your last name, bud. He said, hi, hope to help. You centered the piston pins wrong. The crankshaft is offset from the center of the cylinder. You are correct. To the center of the rod. To center the rod properly, you have to move the rod and the piston to the side of the offset. It'll move back a little when you install it, and the wrist pin won't drag on the cylinder. They make big scores up and down the liners. You know, if you do it wrong, good luck, Wes. I appreciate it, Wes, but I think you're wrong on this one, bud. Not entirely. Let me explain. And when he commented on this, whenever somebody says I'm wrong at something, I always assume that they're right and they have more experience than I do. I don't know how much experience you have, Wes, but clearly you've taken Allis's apart before, and this being my first B or C that I'm taking apart, like I said, I assume that I'm wrong, and a bunch of the times I am, so that's just how it works. But in this instance, I think I got it right. Let me explain. So we've got the IT shop manual here, the finest manual that money can buy. I kid. So the manual states bosses of iron pistons, which we don't have, blah blah blah. Connecting rods in B, C, CA, and RC are offset with respect to the big end of the bearing. That would be this. You can see it's fatter here than it is here. Rods in WC, WD, WD45, WF are straight. Iron pistons for WC, WD, and WF have pin bosses of unequal length. On aluminum pistons, bosses are of equal length. So what that's saying is, in those last three tractors in here, one boss will be longer than the other. So, if we go down a little further, on B, C, CA, and RC, assemble pins to rods so that the pin will be centered between the bosses. And that's what I was showing in the last video. What Wes was saying is that I should have had it slid off to one side, much like the diagram here. However, that's for other models of Allis's where the bearing on the connecting rod is the same on both sides of the rod, not like on the C where one side is heavier than the other. So basically it's just let me show you. So basically on a lot of these engines, as you can probably see here, this connecting rod journal is not on the center line of that cylinder. So to make up for that offset, there's two spots you can do it. One of them being on the piston pin. You can slide the whole connecting rod off to one side. The other would be on this end of the connecting rod. You can slide this whole assembly off to one side. So after going through it, and I'm 90% sure I got it right now. Like I said, when Wes called me out, my first assumption was that I was wrong. This part of the connecting rod is in line with the center line of the bore of the cylinder because they offset, they make up for the offset on the crankshaft in this area, not in this area. So if you have one of those other models of tractors, like I said, WC, WD, WD45, and WF, depending on what pistons you have, then yes, you do have to offset the connecting rod in the piston like Wes was talking about. So, and the easiest way to tell if you got that wrong or not is to just put it together and see if your piston pin is scraping on the side of your cylinder. Not the best way to find out, but it is the easiest way. So, with that being said, we can start putting connecting rod bearings in and getting our crushes, much like we did on the main bearings. And then we can start putting pistons in and getting connecting rod bearings connected. So, the first thing I did was, obviously I ran all of the connecting rods and their caps through the parts tank, and then some of the connecting bolts, you can see there, they got mashed up a bit, so I just ran a flat file over them to get that flat back. And then some of them where they had this big burr, I just knocked that burr off so I don't have to worry about it falling off into the engine. And then of course chase the threads. Alright, so the first thing I do here is I'm taking just one of my Swiss files, and you can see we got some raised material down in there. We are going to unraise it. I don't even know how you get those marks in it. It seems like a strange place to be raising material. That's a little better. So next thing we're gonna do, chip guard out of the way, and we're going to put our alignment bolts into the connecting rod, and as you can see there, some of them line up better than the others, and this is where that knob came from on some of them, is they don't exactly have a hard stop there, so they can twist just a bit and get found up like that. So, for the more difficult side, take your friendly neighborhood soft face hammer and just fairly gently I said, this other side just fell right in. Next, I'm going to take one of my bearing shell halves, and they only go in one way. It's the same as the main rods. They have that little bump out so that they can't spin on you. And in they go. And same thing for the other half. Lucky for me, this one does not have any raised material on this. So nice of the last people not to hit it with a hammer. And then I'm just going to get those nice and even, which can be the hard part. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm just trying to get them even so that I can check the crush like I did on the last one. And then the caps are the same as the connecting rod, where one side is longer than the other. Just slide her on right like that. Also the same as the main bearings is they want 1.5 thou to 2 thou crush on this. So we're going to take a measurement, measure our crankshaft, and make sure that it is 1.5 thou to 2 thou bigger than what we want it to finish at, because once we put the tension on there, that'll smush it down. So I'm just going to put the nuts on there finger tight for now. Alright, so there's our assembly. I gave her the old telescoping gauge check through a mic on the journal of the crankshaft. Right now, finger tight, no shims in, we are sitting at 3.5 thou, and that's pre-crush. We're looking for 1.5 thou to 2 thou crush, so that puts us comfortably within that 1 to 2 thou clearance range. So next, make these 3 pistons look like this piston, but that's not what you guys are here for. So what I'm going to do next, put that piston in the block, because I'm dying to do it. I can do those other 3 later. I'm not going to put it on camera. You do one, the other 4 are the same. You guys get the idea. Let's put a piston in this block. Piston, engine block. If you let your engine block sit like I did for over 2 months, you may have accumulated some surface rust. Get it out of there. It's only going to give you problems later. I recommend 1 gloved hand. Ring compressor. And oil of your choosing. Lubrication is key, and I always just use whatever engine oil I'm going to be putting in the engine. Lube the cylinder, piston, just lube everything. Alright, now this part's important. This is what I was talking about before. Long part of the bearing, longer than this, goes towards the flywheel on cylinders 1 and 3. Cylinder number 1. So that is the direction it will be going. Bingo bango. We are in, and that is a good tight piston. I will tell you that much right now. So I'm going to clean that up, get that ready, move on to the next one. I still got to prep the other ones, so just keep moving. Alright, so we got flipped back over now. I'm going to give a healthy shot of assembly lube to everything and put the caps on and tighten down the nuts holding the caps on. I'm not going to torque them down quite yet.
Alright guys, so the camera started cutting out here and there, so I'm going to try and fill it in as best I can. But right here I'm adding the shims that go between the cap and the connecting rod. There's where the camera jumped, but I'm still just putting caps on. And again, just adding the shims before I put the caps on. Very similar to what we had to do with the main bearings.
New day, new shirt, same engine. Next thing we're gonna do, torque our connecting rod bolts to 40 foot-pounds. Now this is a castellated nut, so we gotta get the crownations, I think is the technical term. We just talked about this at work the other day and I forgot what the word was. Whatever you call them, you gotta get the slot to line up with the hole. So I'm gonna torque them. If I can't get them to line up even close, usually you can get them close within a foot-pound or two, just start switching them out until you find ones that match. Alright, so every fastener in the bottom end of this engine has now been torqued. Now what we gotta do is just fasten them. 40 foot-pounds isn't that much, so we can put a little bit more or a little bit less on there. Get them all cotter pinned in real nice. I have some just regular old steel wire to tie these guys up like the way they were. A little less critical to get those lined up is with the cotter pins, obviously. And then one last thing I'm going to do is do a side clearance check on here. I believe it's 4 to 7 thou between the connecting rod and the crankshaft. And just to clear this up one more time, you can look down here and see that the connecting rod is centered between the bosses when it's hooked up to the crankshaft. And again, that's because the offset is here instead of between the connecting rod and the piston itself. Side clearance check. 4th thou go, 8th thou no go. That's a go. And that's a go. Feels like it shifted this way a little bit, but that's a no-go. Obviously, that is a no-go. So that's what we're looking for right there. I'll check the rest. I also should be pointing out when you're doing this, these can slide back and forth, so make sure they're kind of in the middle. You could stick feeler gauges on both sides at the same time if you want to even. So the manual doesn't really talk about this much, but I'm going to take this is just a piece of steel wire, and obviously we have a hole in the top of each bolt head. So going off of memory, what I'm going to do is get that about like that, and I'm going to crisscross it. That kind of, something like that. And then using a pair of lineman's pliers, I'm just gonna twist that up. And as I twist it, it will tighten these guys up. I kind of accidentally went too much and twisted off my twist, but I still have enough on there that I'm okay with it. So, not my favorite way of doing it. I think I'm going to redo that one because I'm a little light on the twist. Better to fix it now than to have a piece of wire wobbling around in your crankcase when you get everything all bolted back together. Well, that's that. We got all our clearances checked. We have our securing wires in, cotter pins are in. So as always guys, I know it's been a while, but life happens. Appreciate you watching, and it won't be nearly as long till the next one comes out, because we're kind of on a roll now that we're not waiting for parts. Stay tuned.